Yeah, I know we're like 3 weeks late on this topic, but it's whatever. I definitely wanted to let this sink in a little bit before going over it on the channel, because this type of contract extension was one that was in a little bit of a different territory than all the other ones that we had seen handed out to guys like JT Miller or Mateychuk. This contract extension specifically that we're going to be talking about in this video is a lot more of a boom or bust type of extension. Let's head over to Buffalo and talk about a player that I personally really like. This is a good player with a good story. It is none other than TT himself, Mr. Tage Thompson of the Buffalo Sabres. Let's open up this video by talking about the story of Tage Thompson and then going over the contract extension, which will see him making an extended amount of money until 2030. Thompson right now is 24 years old. He's 6'7", 218 as a right-handed center winger, and he's a guy that actually did make that transition to center earlier last season with the Sabres. He was drafted by the Blues back in 2016, where he was seen as a potential middle six caliber prospect heading into the long term. After a few seasons playing with the University of Connecticut in the NCAA, Tage Thompson signed his contract with the Blues, and he played 41 games with the team. Now, he only had 9 points in those 41 games, and the development that he had in the AHL wasn't really all too great either, which is why when the Buffalo Sabres traded one Ryan O'Reilly over to the St. Louis Blues, Tage Thompson was indeed part of the return. Now, for a few good years after this trade had been completed, a lot of people went out there and said that the Buffalo Sabres kind of got the short end of the stick because, hey, Ryan O'Reilly became a captain, he won a Stanley Cup with the Blues, and he was so good and this and that, and look at what Berglund and Sabotka and Thompson are able to do. They're not really all too great in isolation, and that was a very fair argument to bring up over the past few years. But for Tage Thompson, after spending a few years going up and down between the Buffalo Sabres and the Rochester Americans, he finally played a full NHL season this previous year. In 78 games played, Tage Thompson had 38 goals and 30 assists for 68 total points. The year beforehand, he only had 14 points in 38 games played. So you could definitely see that there's been a huge boost in production for Thompson and what he's able to accomplish at the NHL level. Sure, he is a big guy, 6'7", but he doesn't really play like a big guy. He just happens to be big. Instead, Tage Thompson is a skilled forward with some really good shooting ability, and all the skills with the puck, with his hands, etc., they really showcased themselves off this previous year. I mean, it's not every day you see a guy go out there and get 38 goals on the year while being just a brand new NHL player. Tage Thompson right now is making $1.4 million a season till the end of 2023. And because he had entered the summer period of the 2022 season just a few weeks ago, you had yourselves a contract extension giving out to Thompson, which will kick in 2023. This contract extension goes on till 2030, and it sees Tage Thompson making $7.1 million a year as an AAV. Now, as we said, he is currently 24 years old. He'll be 25 by the time October rolls around, but 2030 is a ways away, and he's going to be, okay, what is that, 8 years plus 25? He's going to be 33 years old by the time that contract comes to an end. Now, the reason we're saying that this is a boom or bust contract is because Tage Thompson is getting paid $7-ish million a year starting in 2023 until 2030 because of one fantastic season. And granted, it was very good. Very fantastic what Tage Thompson was able to do, but one season is not indicative of how some players are going to play for the next few years. Tage Thompson just happens to be a bet that the Sabres want to go out there and take. Let's go over some of the possibilities as to what could happen for Thompson in his career as his contract goes on, and what will ultimately make this contract seem like an absolute steal heading into the long-term future. If Tage Thompson goes out there and he has another season that is like the one that he just had, let's say he maybe even gets a point per game on the year, he gets 40 goals and he gets 30-something assists. If Tage Thompson has that type of a year, and it's kind of indicative of how he's going to progress as a 26, 27, and 28-year-old, then $7.1 million a year, that's a pretty good contract, especially in a situation where the cap is going up year after year. Gotta remember, it's going up now. It's not frozen in time anymore like it was during the pandemic. I mean, I guess we're still in the pandemic, right? I don't really know. But there is a realistic possibility that Tage Thompson makes this contract look like a steal if he progresses in the way that a 24-year-old who just came off of a 68-point and 78-game year probably should. However, if Tage Thompson goes out there next year and he produces, let's say, the same amount of points, maybe even just a little bit less. Let's say he gets 30 goals and he ends off on, 65 total points in 82 games played. All of a sudden, a guy in that sort of territory, if he stays in that kind of production rate for the next few years, that's not that bad for a $7.1 million player. It's serviceable enough to justifyingly say, okay, at least the contract gets yourself a good player that can get 30 goals in a year. But if Tage Thompson goes out there and he absolutely craps the bed, because he's only played one season in the NHL where he was good, if he goes out there next year and he reverts back to his old habits of not really being all too comfortable to play down the middle of the ice and play with his strengths and play a skill game rather than being forced to play a more physical game, if he goes out there and completely tanks the bed, you're looking at Jeff Skinner 2.0. You're looking at a situation where a guy is getting paid $7.1 million a season because of one season that he had. When you sign a contract like this, you gotta make sure that the guy is, at the very least, going to produce for the next few years. And Tage Thompson, as a 24-year-old, he's in the prime timeline of development right here towards getting better in the short-term future. You need results out of this guy now. And the Buffalo Sabres are confident that they're going to be able to get that done, which is why they gave him that contract in the first place. If Tage Thompson goes out there in 2022-2023, let's say in the first 41 games of the year, the guy has, 20 goals already. He has 20 goals and he has, let's say, 40 assists, because that's a cool number, right? If he's in that point-per-game territory right off the bat, all of a sudden the Sabres look like absolute mad lad geniuses, because they already signed this guy, who's currently making 1.4 AAV, to that long-term extension. Hey, this guy can get better. Year after year, he's getting 40 goals each time, then 7.1 is a very good number. But that is the type of risk that you are taking when you sign players who have only played, how many games has he played in the NHL right now? 223 games. My gosh, he's played a lot of games at the NHL level. I mean, there were a few with St. Louis and a few with Buffalo throughout the years. I mean, the season he had in Buffalo the first year, 12 points, 65 games played. Going from that to 68 points in the span of 3 years is absolutely insane to me. But if that is kind of indicative of the progression for Tage Thompson, then hey, be my guest. Go out there and do your thing. Destroy worlds, Mr. Tage Thompson. No matter what happens, though, I definitely do feel happy for the guy for being able to make the bag in the way that he did and being able to bounce back in the NHL in the way that he did, even though he's only had one good season so far with the Buffalo Sabres getting those 38 goals. We'll see where he goes from here, but at the end of the day, you can talk in the comments on your thoughts about the Buffalo Sabres and this contract. To finalize everything, I feel like I could just say it like this. The Buffalo Sabres, they have the opportunity and pretty much the right to go out there to make risks like these. The Sabres aren't in any super dire contending window, nor are they in any super dire, okay, we need to finish in last place type of rebuild. Having a guy like Tage Thompson making the amount of money that he is will either be seen as an amazing contract down the line or just another Jeff Skinner. And at the end of the day, Jeff Skinner, I mean, sure, the contract situation was really bad, but, like, it's not really like he was holding the Sabres back from doing anything, right? I don't know. You can talk in the comments on your thoughts about Tage Thompson and the contract that he was given, but I hope you enjoyed this video either way. So that is Troll9, and bye.